Blog Talk Radio.
It's time for Voice of Indie. Your hosts today are Beem Weeks, author, producer, and marketing monster for independent multimedia publisher Fresh Ink Group, and Stephen Gies, author, producer, composer, and publisher for Fresh Ink Group.
And good evening, and welcome to episode number 7 of Voice of Indie, the podcast where we highlight authors, musicians, and any other creative kind of souls. I'm your host, Beem Weeks, and with me is my co-host, as usual, Mr. Stephen Gies. How you doing tonight, Stephen?
I'm doing great. I'm just wearing a plain purple shirt, so nothing fancy today. I want to remind all our listeners out there that if you're over on Twitter, type in hashtag Fresh Ink Group in the search bar, hit the latest tab, and you can follow along or post questions or comments. We'll monitor during the show, and if you have something interesting to say, we'll probably read it.
Definitely. And also, you can join in the discussion on the air if you care to call in. And if you have any questions or comments for our guest, the number is 516-453-9902. And once again, that is 516-453-9902.
Today we're talking to Robert McKenzie, author of The Chair, Volume 1 and Volume 2. And who knows, there might be a Volume 3 someday, but The Chair, Volume 1 has been out, and Volume 2 is just being released this week for pre-sale. You got a commercial for us, Beem?
I sure do.
A grand epic saga by Robert McKenzie, The Chair spans centuries, touching the lives of 22 related mothers and daughters, their stories witnessed by a simple pine chair. Resolute, strong, loving, and fiercely protective, these women must strive to pass their values to new generations in a world of racism and sexism, politics, scandal, fashion, even the rise and dominance of baseball. They live in privilege and poverty, with faith and despair, relishing every moment of love, even as they suffer a biting grief. Volume 1, Lightning, Thunder, and Glory, spans the 1600s through World War I, while Volume 2, Faith, Hope, and Love, follows these women's descendants into modern times and beyond. An authentic and uniquely American novel, The Chair conjures the very hallmarks of history, yet navigates the simple intimacy of everyday lives to reveal who and why we are. Proudly published by Fresh Ink Group, The Chair Volumes 1 and 2 are available worldwide in jacketed keepsake hardcover edition, handy softcover, and all major ebook formats from Kindle to Nook, Kobo, Google Play, iTunes, and more. Everybody sits, so find your own seat and discover The Chair.
Okay, David Robert McKenzie was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on October 30th, 1955. His family moved to Denver in 1956, Los Angeles in 1958, Phoenix in 1961, Denver in 1965, Seattle in 1967, and Houston in 1968. He graduated from the University of California, Los Angeles with a BA in political science in 1978, then an MA in public administration in 1988 from the University of Houston. He has traveled to every major city in the United States and many in Europe, including London, Berlin, Brussels, Amsterdam, as well as Bogota. He currently resides in Houston. And with that, welcome to the show, Robert. We are so glad to have you on The Voice of Indie.
Hello, and thanks for having me.
Now, do you care to add anything more to your bio there? Did I miss anything?
Other places you might have lived?
So good.
That's quite a itinerary there, traveling around the country. Now, I see you moved to Houston in 1968. Have you been there since 1968? Is this kind of the permanent home now?
Yes, that's where I live since basically 1980.
Okay.
We see that you went to UCLA. I understand you played football there?
Yes, I'm essentially the Moonlight Graham of UCLA, so you need to look him up. He was a one-time Major League Baseball player who played one game in the major leagues, so that's how I kind of fashioned myself. But yes, I did, and quite proud of that fact. And I guess the most important thing is that I graduated. Because
definitely.
And that's the most important thing.
Yeah. Before we go any further, I do see that we do have a caller already, so I guess we'll bring this caller in. Hello, caller. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello.
Yeah. Hi. I'm Pat from St. Louis.
Hi,
Hello,
Pat.
Pat.
I want to... Hi, Robert. How are you?
Doing great, man.
Good. I'm so proud of Robert writing this book. I just want to say I'm probably one of the few people that have read the entire manuscript, which Volume 2 will be coming out. But originally it was written as one book, so I did get to read the whole thing. And I just want to say I just really I thought it was great. I enjoyed it immensely. I'm very close to Robert's age, and Robert and I have a lot of the same interests. We were, pardon?
You're much older.
No, well, okay. But I think this book, especially for people of our generation, it's great, and it means more to people like us. And but I did want to say I enjoy historical fiction so much, and this is historical fiction. I mean, there's so many different topics and edges to this thing that it's amazing. Now, it's not going to hit everybody the same way, but certain parts will get somebody in a way that and other parts will get somebody else. But it's to me it's interesting. I know. I think this is everything Robert's wanted to write, and he got the things out. The question I'd like to ask Robert, though, that I've never really asked him, was what characters or what period did you enjoy writing the most?
Well, that's a good question.
Well,
Robert?
I would have to say, just because of my own knowledge of World War I and World War II, along with back to the Civil War, the Civil War to World War II period. My dad was in World War II. My mom's father was a corporal in the army in France in World War I. My great-grandfather, John, was in the Civil War. He was Union private. He was at Gettysburg. His name's on the Pennsylvania Monument. If you ever happen to be out there, John McKenzie. And anyway, so I kind of grew up with legend and lore and facts and what these guys thought, at least told from my dad and my grandfather. My grandfather on my father's side, he was involved in, he was an electrician. He helped build Grand Coulee Dam, and then he was a lineman and a high tension wire guy. And then he also put in the light standards. He oversaw that at Forbes Field in Pittsburgh, the baseball field. So he was the first one to tell me about the meaning of the pirates and the black and gold and all that kind of stuff. He actually knew Honus Wagner. Of course, back then everybody knew Honus Wagner in Pittsburgh. I call it the last great American small town. So, yeah. But
okay,
yeah, World War I and II, and what that meant to everybody, and how that the battle for liberty and freedom, and just really all those wars, which are horrible in and of themselves. I have Vietnam in there. I didn't go to Vietnam. One of my professors asked me if I had, but I missed that. But so, yeah, that's a good question. I particularly like the chapter John, which leads it off, but I won't tell you much more. But John kind of weaves through the whole scenario, and there's a lot of fast forwards and fallbacks and flashbacks and historical references. Some people will get, some they won't, but ideally there ought to be something in there for everybody who's a historian. It's a history of the United States of America. Starts out 1500 to up to World War I in Volume 1, Lightning, Thunder, and Glory. And then Volume 2, which will be out tonight, tomorrow. Looking forward to that. Faith, Hope, and Love. And that's starts with World War I into an uncertain future, the elusive now, events that have happened and will happen. So, yeah. But probably World War I to answer your question in less than an hour.
Great. Well, thanks for calling in, Pat. I see we have a comment on Twitter now from Ronnie Deshay. She says, the chair sounds like an interesting book. I love historical novels.
Yeah.
Be sure to buy the book, Ronnie.
That's why we're here, to push this thing. Now, kind of going back, we're going to dive into the book here in a little bit, Robert, but kind of going back to the idea of you playing football at UCLA. I understand you were also, for a while, an NFL agent. What was that like?
That is correct. That was a lot of fun until it wasn't. So you just got to get guys. You got to get a big name player. It's wonderful. I learned a lot. I had a lot of time, travel, and met players and prospects. And I signed over 200 guys, but about 25 of them made teams as free agents in preseason, but no one ever made an active NFL roster, so that's where you get paid. And I wouldn't trade it. I mean, I toured. I did a SEC Southeastern Conference tour where I drove a Cadillac rent car from Houston all the way up through, you can name LSU, Ole Miss, Arkansas, Kentucky, Alabama, Ole Miss, University of Florida. I took it on up to South Carolina and University of Georgia, between the hedges. So probably I even went to Vanderbilt and University of Tennessee, the Vols. Hopefully I've named most of the teams. And then Texas A&M, of course, is now in the SEC, along with Missouri or Missouri, or however they want to be pronounced.
Missouri, yeah.
Yeah.
So what other kind of jobs have you had?
State thing. Well, I worked at Price Waterhouse. I'm most proud of that, I guess. I was a sales director for the consulting practice and pursued primarily oil and gas clients. That's who I was asked to target. And I worked with a lot of great people, partners who gave me the leeway to be me with sales introductions and meetings and talking about strategy, process, IT enablement, and of course then after you implemented something, you had to give them benefits realization, which was round 2, where the consultant tries to stay on board for a very, very long time. That's the model. So Price Waterhouse is then as Price Waterhouse Coopers. I was there also, but that's what it evolved to, and it's a great experience.
Great. And you've been a contractor for NASA?
Yeah. Yes. Before that, that's why I got contacted. I was with a group that was a subcontractor at NASA, Johnson Space Center, JSC. It's during nearly the end of the shuttle program and the start of International Space Station. Then it was known as Space Station, but the manager of the program, the director, was Fred Hayes. He was the third astronaut on Apollo 13. Houston, we have a problem, but Fred Hayes he was an astronaut. He flew Gemini and some other things, and he was a good guy. He's from Mississippi. I used to go to. The reason I'm mentioning him is because we actually went to Houston Rockets games. That's really the only time I talked to him, because they had tickets once and I went and no one else wanted to go. So kind of hit off a good conversation with him. We ended up connecting with Buzz Aldrin. Some people signed him to one of our subcontracts, and Buzz Aldrin, second man on the moon. I got a bunch of stuff signed from him, so that was cool.
You want to take another call? We've got another caller on the line, so
sure.
Let's see what they've got to say. Come on, hello, caller. You are on the air. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hello, is that me?
Yes,
that's you.
Oh, great. Hi, I'm Lisa, calling from Central New York.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Lisa. Welcome to Voice of Indy and
Hi, Lisa.
Robert McKenzie.
Yes, hello, Robert.
Hi.
So I just rang in, so I only caught the last about 2 minutes of Robert's interview there, the beginning of it, and so what am I supposed to do now? Ask a question?
Do you have a question, a comment?
Make a comment, sing a little song.
Do a little dance.
Do you already know Robert?
Oh, yes. Yes, I know Robert. He's a Twitter friend. Anyway,
Power of Twitter.
So, Robert
Don't
knows
leave home without it.
I've read his book, and I guess my comment would be that once I got used to it's just it seems to be a lot of vignettes in succession and cute little slices of life throughout, and so I'm someone who likes concise. I was not going to get that from Robert's book, but once I got used to that, I really enjoyed it. It's a great book, Robert. It's a lot of fun. It's there's a lot of history. It just shows how much you know, Robert. So I guess that would be my comment. And so
nice of you to say.
Yeah.
Thanks for buying the book.
You have a lot of knowledge, and anyway, so now it's I enjoyed it. I'm rereading it. So
without giving it away, what character, chapter, or something that struck you that because I wrote this with the idea that somebody, whoever, if they bought and read the book, they'd get something out of it, whether they liked it or not, or remains to be seen if they got anything out of it. But I remember sitting there throughout, and it took me, I started this in November of 2016 as a short story about Lana and Lurleen, but I can get to that in a minute. But
yeah, and those
what
it
was is how I felt sitting there and what a reader might think, because I know what you just said about it, vignettes and the sides and things like that, but sub-references and, the emphasis on advertising and trademarking every little detail with my thoughts on it. So is there anything in particular?
Oh, I don't know if there's anything in particular, but I guess I lean towards Lana and Lurleen and Lauren, I guess. So I don't know, those women.
Right. Well, they are core to the whole history and the plot. Yeah. They
right.
Both Lana and Lurleen are Breck girls. So
right. Yeah.
You'll see their portraits in there. They were Breck people. So everybody remembers Breck shampoo with the painted portraits
Yep. Of course, we're showing our age here.
Yeah.
Well, terrific. Thanks for calling in, Lisa. That's some great comments.
You.
And make sure you get Volume 2, which should be for free sale, starting today.
Oh, wonderful.
Thanks, Lisa.
Okay.
Now
we do have another caller.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and take this other caller here, and we can move on to the commercial. Hello, caller. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Yes, hello. This is Kevin from Kingwood, Texas.
Hi, Kevin. Welcome
Kevin.
to the Voice of Indy. Do you have a question or comment for Robert?
Yeah, I maybe it's a bit of a detail, but it's some questions around Chapter 5 and Leroy. There's a couple of things in there that just caught my interest, and it was kind of humorous to me. And so I'll just rattle off my questions, and Robert, if you can remember even one or two of them, that's fine. One was just what was the inspiration for the character Leroy? Two, there's a mention of these putt-putt golf tournaments and betting around putt-putt golf, so I was kind of interested in that. And then three, without giving away too much, there's a big episode or shoot 'em out at a Texaco gas station. So I'm just kind of more curious about the character and those other two things I mentioned. What was the inspiration for that?
Good question.
Well, a couple of years back, I was up at Tulsa, Oklahoma at the Hard Rock Cafe, Casino, and Hotel. And the man that drove the bus, the shuttle bus, he was pretty talkative. He was worse than I am. But he started asking questions about, do you play Omaha? He didn't like Texas Hold'em. He thought I was like paint dry. And he was a high school coach, and he was retired, so you really didn't know who this guy was. If he was some multimillionaire oilman or whatever. He was a Native American descent. He had some stories. I think that was the whole thing for him, was to tell stories on the bus, and he played poker, so I kind of put this together with a Native American Lakota tribe. And of course, they slaughtered Custer. But so as I evolved the chair, I thought, well, this would be a good character in some ways. He plays poker. He builds a children's hospital. He sponsors and plays in putt-putt, and he's got a sidekick named Merle. So they kind of travel all over and do different, they show up at some events you've heard of, some are not too famous, but that was the inspiration for that. And then the Texaco gas station, it reminded me of all the times I've traveled and all the highways, the interstates in Texas, where you just pull off in the middle of nowhere and you don't know what's going to happen or what's going on with the police or a chase I pulled into once a long time ago at a stop and go, and there was some kind of police shootout I arrived up on. But yeah, and then what was your second question?
Putt-putt golf?
The putt-putt golf. Is that something you made up, or was that the betting on putt-putt golf, is that really something that happened?
Well, for those who haven't read the book, you'll have to read the book. I don't want to give it away. I've got Glenn McCarthy. He was the model for the movie Giant, the book Ferber's Giant. And even that book's in there. I do a lot of books and literature references and movies, but I have it where Glenn McCarthy builds this Shamrock Hotel, and it became the Shamrock Hilton, owned by Conrad Connie Hilton, who he's kind of featured in the Mad Men Netflix series. So I find that an interesting character where Leroy interfaces with a lot of different people, celebrities that people will know.
Thanks, Robert.
Okay.
That was my favorite chapter of the first 10. Appreciate
All right.
it.
Well, thank you for calling in, Kevin.
Thanks for calling.
Bye.
Okay.
We're going to take a real quick break here because we got another commercial to run. We're running contests for our new short story collections. Go ahead and roll it, Beem.
All righty.
Writers, got a short story looking for a prestigious anthology that will showcase your work alongside other top authors? Or maybe you've experienced a moment worth sharing, perhaps with some poignant meaning we could all appreciate? Fresh Ink Group is accepting submissions for our second and third volumes of the Fresh Ink Group Short Story Showcase to be released worldwide in hardcover, softcover, and all ebook formats. There are no fees to enter. Winners are not only published, but are eligible to become members of Fresh Ink Group with your own dashboard in the FreshInkGroup.com website. Head on over to FreshInkGroup.com Contest tab to learn more. Then grease up the old Underwood and get those shorts down on parchment so you can get your entries in sooner than later. And you readers, discover 49 wondrous tales already released in the Fresh Ink Group Short Story Showcase #1, available in all formats worldwide.
All right. I do want to throw in here. We do have a couple of comments on Twitter from Vern Wayne Greenhoe, who's in my neck of the woods in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. His first comment, he said, "I was just checking out Robert McKenzie's book. It looks like something I would enjoy." And then the next comment, he said, "I just bought the book." So there you go. Robert, you got to fail.
Several thousand more to do that.
Yes.
Fantastic. I hope you enjoy it and, have fun with it. It's clearly something I put my heart and soul in, but whatever it might be, there is some Michigan in the thing. So,
all right.
Yeah, there definitely is.
Some Ty Cobb in there. So
cool. Yeah, Ronnie Deshay on Twitter, she also said, putt golf was so fun. The only golf I could play, and I wasn't half bad. I'm in the same boat as you, Ronnie. I never played real golf, but I played a lot of putt-putt.
Yeah, I think we've all putt-putted. Now, Robert...
It's a good date event if you're out with somebody who, I guess it's a function of who you're with and what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Robert, our last caller brought up a real good point. The Chair is historical fiction. He was asking what kind of things influenced you. Is it entirely fictional?
No, it weaves a whole, like I mentioned, 1500 to the future, and there are many events, the wars I mentioned. There's the siege of New Orleans. I won't go into it because you got to read the book. But no, there's a lot of things people will recognize, and the chair, the pine chair, the old pine chair, as it evolves and goes around all over the place, there's a plot behind what exactly that is. That's woven into all these historic events, and the chair is there for many of them, many that you've heard of, and that's the whole timeline and evolution of not only the chair speaking to the audience as a reliable narrator explaining events, and then the author, I actually created the author. I keep myself arm's length from myself and having written it. That is an unreliable author because he just shoots from the hips at times in the middle of nowhere, along with telling real events and boredom and mundane but actionable, fantastic, tremendous catastrophes and victories and losses. But then I kind of deadpan sometimes, a la Woody Allen would do to the audience, and that's truly me talking to the reader. So
you as you mentioned,
chair speaks very awkwardly. People might want to pick up on that. There's a reason for that, which I think people will pick up on at some point.
Yeah,
why would you even want to use a chair's point of view in a book?
That's what I was going to ask. Why a chair?
Well, the genesis of this was back on Thanksgiving at my high school quarterback best friend. Thanksgiving they held at his house, and we were all sitting there. They had an all-day event of food and the big table in the dining room, and his mom and daughter were there, and relatives and friends coming and going. So we're sitting in the two big chairs in the living room watching. Beem, you'll know this. Detroit Lions are always the early game, home game.
Yeah.
And then the afternoon, Dallas Cowboys. So, and he can't stand the Cowboys. Neither can I. I'm a Steeler fan. But anyway, his daughter keeps bringing back this old chair, and from the other room, and so she's cutting in front of the screen, and I'm looking at it. It's kind of annoying after a few times, and I'm thinking, why don't you just keep the chair at the table? I didn't say anything because I was a guest. You don't want to get thrown out of your best friend's house. But so she kept going back and forth. So I pointed out, I said, that's an old chair. That chair has probably been a lot of places. So his mom chimes in and says, oh, yeah, we had that chair in Denver and El Paso and Germany and all these places. So I kind of thought, yeah, that's pretty cool. An old chair, it's been cast away into the side room, the garage, or the attic, the cellar. I'm thinking, okay, great. But I keep bringing it back and forth. So I kind of looked over at this chair when it was empty. So I'm thinking, like, to myself, what if that chair is like witnessing all of this? And if the chair tells a story, because a lot of this is around the holidays and family and travel and people home from the wars and things like this, the old chair. And the chair witnesses a lot of things. And so I decided, well, the chair could talk. The chair only talks to the reader, and that's all I'll tell you about the chair. But that was the genesis and what, because I drove home that evening thinking, well, what if I wrote a short story with a mom willing this old chair to her daughter? And they had this correspondence in cursive writing. I'm kind of a cursive writing person because that's how we all used to learn that. That should show you the age of cursive writing. I don't think people even know what cursive handwriting is today.
Not anymore.
But, you get graded on it. You get handwriting class, right? For the little letters over the chalkboard and, with the green lines and all that, white lines with a green background. Anyway, A to Z. Z was always kind of far out, as was Q. But so I decided we'll have this mom and daughter who became Lana and Lurleen because I decided that when this thing expanded, all the women, their first names start with L in this family lineage. I decided, well, they'll talk back and forth and converse on the telephone, and I just said, this would be a great short story. I'm going to produce this thing, and I'm going to get it up to the New Yorker, because my mom always had me read the New Yorker. She'd come in and show me the cartoons, they're funny, and when I was a little kid. So I thought, man, I got to send this to the New Yorker. I actually sent it to, I'm thinking I'm going to send it to the Atlantic also. They publish famous short stories. So, well, I started writing, and the thing kind of took off. And one thing that I decided was, well, let's just write the whole history of everything that's anything and include the whole world. So I just took off my imagination, and it was a tremendous feeling only because I'd never done anything like this, obviously, but you never do, obviously, till you do it. But there was just a feeling around this, and I kind of decided, well, this may be what writers feel when they start doing what they're doing, sitting here at night or in the morning. You get an idea, you go there, write. I wrote a lot of pages in cursive, which I keep over here in a chest. So I've got a whole the chair file. So the first thing is lightning, thunder, and glory. There's a little meaning there people can catch on to if you see the logo on the front of the book. And in Volume 2 coming out tonight will be Faith, Hope, and Love. There's a logo there, and that's something that Gary designed, which is cool. And I'm going to thank him, and I want to thank Lauren Smith for being my editor. She worked tirelessly on this, and I had no idea what I was getting into, so I thought, just write this thing and make a couple of edits. Well, little did I know, I didn't know what I was doing until they didn't have to take this project on, so I'm very thrilled to be part of Freshing Group.
And Freshing Group is proud to have you.
Yeah, definitely. Now, you had mentioned just a little while ago about the the author not being that reliable of a narrator. What about the chair? Is the chair a reliable narrator?
Right. The chair is the reliable narrator because the chair only states blunt facts and observations. And the chair pulls no punches. And but the chair thinks people think that the chair is listening to them or feeling them, but to everyone else in the book, chair is just a chair that's brought out at Christmas or Thanksgiving or sits in the cellar or in a closet in Germany. So I gave the chair a life of its own, and that's why, obviously.
Sounds like a world traveler.
Chair. It's not a chair. I understand this is an actual character. I'm going to get copyrighted, which is part of my whole thing in there with the copyright signs and TM and registered trademarks for all these products that you can't buy a product nowadays unless it has a TM on it or registered or, you got to copyright everything you ever sang or wrote or, whatever. But there's a lot of music and movies, but back to what you said, I thought the chair would be the star of the show. And then there's a screenplay. We're going to turn this into a movie. I hope Ron Howard, if you're listening out there, Quentin Tarantino, call me.
Yeah, Quentin's a regular listener here.
Yeah, he calls in once in a while.
Yeah, just watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and that's right late 60s, early 70s at Los Angeles, and you recognize so many things from that time. And then they have the Bruin Theater right there in Westwood, and I used to go to all those theaters all the time. So that was a good, you were feeling it there. So, yeah, but the chair is all of us, and we are all the chair.
Okay. We're going to take another quick break. We're still talking to Robert McKenzie, author of The Chair. We will be back with Robert in a minute. Right now, we want to play you a trailer that we made for author Gracie Bradford. We don't publish her books at Fresh Ink Group, but she's a good friend of ours, and we try to support her in her books. And this trailer, if you go to our YouTube channel, you can watch the actual video of it. But right now, Beam's going to play you the audio.
Hi, I'm Sean, and I'm 10. Ladybird is my beagle. Right from the start, I knew she had special powers, and that we could share secrets. I was the coolest kid at school before the accident hurt my ability to see. Then, I became a kid with special needs. I was not always close friends with the kids I started calling feel, hear, touch, and taste. We would play sometimes, but then I needed help learning a new way of life that takes friendship and trust. Ladybird helps a lot, especially since she has special needs too. Ladybird understands how each of us has our own challenges to rise above. I would really like to tell you about Ladybird and what she does for my friends and me. Our story is in the book, Ladybird, Sean's Sixth Sense, by Gracie Bradford. Gracie is a really cool grandma who writes these I Am stories about kids finding new ways to be their best. You should check out Gracie Bradford's books. A great one to start with is the one with me and the world's coolest dog, Ladybird, Sean's Sixth Sense.
All right, we do have another comment on Twitter. Verwayne Greenhow, he said, in quoting, "If the chair could talk, love it. I used to be able to write in cursive. Now, if it doesn't have a keyboard, I'm done." I think I'm there too.
Yeah, that's pretty good. It's a skill you almost got to practice. So just making notes in the margin. I like the letter L also. That L in cursive. So all the women, Lennon, Lurleen, Lauren, and you'll see them all. That's important to write an L. L is a cool cursive letter. Capital.
Well, there's a book for you. You can have a book where it's the cursive alphabet comes to life. Each of the letters have their own personalities.
Yeah. Hey, don't get me started. You just gave me an idea.
Well, that could be
I
for
write
kids.
the book about
Kids
a chair.
learning
He's
how
able to do anything.
We do have another comment on Twitter. This one from Ronnie Deshay. She says, "I love that the chair is the central character. How fun." I think we all agree with you, Ronnie.
Yeah. Now, Robert, how did a quarterback inspire this story?
Well, that's my high school quarterback. He's my friend.
Okay, all right. We already touched on
years.
that. Yeah, all right.
He was the leader of our team, and that's he knows more about football than I do, and he was an Oiler fan when the Oilers were here, and he went to a lot of games. He took me to games, and he was an outstanding thrower of the football, and so it's funny how long time it's going.
You have, throughout this whole story, you weave a lot of famous people in there, even like Jim Morrison and people like that. Can you give us some examples about some of the characters that are in there and how they actually became part of the story?
Well, Donald Trump is in there. When he was 1980s Donald Trump, he was having a sandwich somewhere. And then Ulysses S. Grant is in there because he has a famous photograph outside his tent with the chair. I don't want to give them all away, but David Farragut, the admiral of the naval the siege of New Orleans, he went up the Mississippi and laid claim and siege of New Orleans, whatever you want to say. You got to get that right sometimes too, based on who you're with.
Nolans.
I have a number of presidents who comment on things mysteriously in my own narrative way. I have a fighter pilot in there people are going to have to pick up on. World War II. The key themes are around aviation, transportation, modeling. Like I said, Kathy Ireland follows me on Twitter. If you're out there, Kathy, I need your 1 million followers. Please retweet this. And call in if you're listening. So
there's a lot of fashion in there, too.
Yeah, and so and a lot of L women. And as you go through times, there's an approach onto primarily women's fashion, but also men's. I even got a mention of the Beau Brummel style and who Beau Brummel actually was. There's a famous movie around that in a book. But if you ever see the movie Beau Brummel, check it out. Silent flick, devastating. Take a handkerchief till you'll cry your eyes out. But it's called.
There was a band back in the '60s called the Beau Brummel.
Who's that?
I said there was a band back in the '60s by that name as well.
Right, the Beau Brummels. That's right.
Yes.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, we're showing our age.
Yeah.
We have to do that. I've also got in there the FBI, the Texas Rangers. I've got a character. He's a general, Lieutenant General Homer C. Dog Leyendecker. He's quite a character. I made him up, and you'll see what he does to do what he does. And
well, I think my favorite.
I got a woman CIA director. She's pretty special. I liked actually creating all of these characters, and they kind of weave in and out. There's mentions and this here, there, and everywhere. But the chair is witness to a lot of it. And you mentioned Jim Morrison. I'll just tell you, Jim Morrison died in Paris, so there's a reason for that. And Jim Morrison went to UCLA also, so that's cool.
That's right.
He went to the film school there.
Right, and his father was an admiral in the Navy.
Yeah.
And lived in, I think it was Jacksonville, Florida, and at one time Jim left home, and I wonder why a guy like Jim Morrison would have a conflict with his father. But anyway, he supposedly stopped off in, there's kind of an allusion to his whole travels, but he stopped off in Johnson City, Texas, and he pulled off, and LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, who's in there. Everett Dirksen, for God's sake, is in there. I've got the March on Washington with all these actors, and Martin Luther King Jr. and Rita Moreno and Paul Newman, James Garner. I even had the Rockford. I had his 1980. I went out and bought the car, the Gold Firebird. When I lived in Santa Monica, they were always filming the Rockford Files in the 70s. They closed the streets. But anyway, I never met him, but James Garner, there's nobody better. But
okay, we do have another caller, so let's bring that up. And hello, caller. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hi, Robert. I'm Tamara from Houston, Texas.
Hi, Tamara. Welcome to the show, Tamara.
Thanks. I had a question regarding the characters Lana and Lurleen. I was just wondering where the association came from regarding the Breck girls. How did you associate those with Lana and Lurleen?
Well, in the book, they both at one time are Breck girls, and their portraits are taken and painted. And the photographs, I don't want to give it all away, but they're photographs of them as Breck girls. And I actually had to go get copyright permission from the owners of those paintings and portraits, and there's a whole lineage around how that came to be. And I just decided, well, this picture is what I would envision Lana to look like. And then she's going to have a daughter, and Lana's born on November 11th, 1918. That's a famous date. You can look that up. And then the daughter, Lurleen, I do the same thing with her, Breck girl, successor type. There's a whole different dynamic with those two on all the things. I mean, everybody has a mother, so you know the dynamic there. But what I was going to say was it was important because they gave me permission. They said, yeah, let us know when it comes out. We're glad somebody's featuring these because the actual portraits are stored in the Library of Congress. But a company that used to be Dial Soap that inherited Breck became a company from Europe that was headquartered here in Connecticut. So I just called on the phone thinking, no, you got to fill out all these forms and, Fifth Exchequer of the Fourth Reich and get it notarized. So I didn't have to do it. They just sent me an email, and, Gary knows this. I forwarded it on to him. So it was cool. I thought I think this is what these two women look like. And that's why we had them in there as Breck girls.
Okay, thanks so much. I really enjoyed the book.
Okay, thank you for buying it, and thank you very much for calling in.
Okay, thanks.
Houston, Texas, representing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Now, Robert, one of my favorite characters, in fact, I'd say my favorite character would be John in World War I. And I know he's at least partly fictional, but wasn't he influenced by a journal or something?
No, that's the fighter pilot in World War II.
The fighter pilot.
Influenced by the journal, yeah, Edward. And I don't want to give that away either, but there's my old boss's father was in World War II, and he was a fighter pilot for the United States Navy. And so he, a few years ago, had given his son this journal of events of him flying. And I can't give you too much about it, but there's a dynamic in there with him and his chapter and who is the other characters in there. Lana's husband is actually in the Edward chapter to a great extent, as he is in Dan McCracken. It's Lana McCracken is the wife of Dan McCracken. And there's a whole lineage of who the ancestors are of Lana and Dan. And Dan is Branch McCracken was a basketball coach at Indiana. So I have Branch McCracken and Dan McCracken. Branch is real. People can look him up. And Dan is his brother. But no, that's the World War II flying ace who actually did battle in both the European and the Pacific theater.
How did you come to get this journal?
His son gave it to me by email. When I told him I was writing a book, and I said, yeah, this would be great because I need something to really touch on the way that people spoke and the way that people acted, and they were humble, and they were fighting for America, and they were part of a team, which I learned from all of this. And it's just you're opening back to the various times, the Alamo, the World War I, how racism, sexism, sex, what people read then, what they thought, what they thought of the future, the mothers and daughters who, each successive generation, they're all trying to do what's best for their daughter and have their own lives. And like I mentioned, loves and losses and colossal victories, disastrous defeats, which we all have. So, yeah, but I think the journal was an eye-opener. It's just it might as well be something written from Winston Churchill or, well, of course, nobody lived at the Alamo, but somebody put a journal together and they found it in a cellar somewhere. But I've got Davy Crockett in there. I've got Davy Crockett's brother. I don't think he even had a brother, but you need to take a look. And people, I hope they enjoy the roller coaster because there is a point to it. There is a thread which disappears and hides and comes back, and it is nuanced. And I'm not a journalist or a writer. I guess I am now. I guess I'm a professional writer. This lady just bought the book. So
there you go.
I can always say, I did chart that on my resume. I turned this whole thing into the chair, Robert McKenzie on LinkedIn. So,
well, they're also Fresh Ink Group books, so that's prestige right there.
That's right.
Yes,
exactly. You're in a Fresh Ink Group of might be Scribner and Sons and Penguin and all the famous. I have a piece in there with you mentioned you like John, but I've also got in there some of the tunes from World War I and the guys in France, and they sync up with the Brits, and it's just very actionable with actually being there. I try to capture what it was like in all of these different eras to actually be there. And then there's a real dynamic with what the chair is and what the chair does.
I think having access to a journal and you're writing historical fiction, that's just a fantastic resource material right there, because that's somebody's personal experience that can't be found in a history book.
And when you use that and blend it in with the fiction, the reader's going to think, this can't be, but it was. So that's why I'm very proud of it and very happy that his son allowed me this access and blessing to put this together.
It brings a lot of authenticity to the book. You can feel that as you're reading it.
Yeah, right. And I remember my dad taught. He was 17 at the end of World War II. He was a chief petty officer, gunner's mate, gunny. He trained people on the big. He was 17. He was a sharpshooter. He got in late in the war. He didn't go overseas. I could have made something up here for you, but he didn't. But his older brother, my dad's name is David Murdoch McKenzie. This is Irish and Scottish. But his older brother Dennis was actually an engine chief down below on the Missouri battleship that got retired before the start of World War II. And they retired him because he was too old. He was close to 30, and he wasn't going to go to the new ship. So I remember Uncle Bud coming to visit us in these various towns you mentioned earlier where we lived, and he explained some World War II things and what his grandfather, my dad's grandfather, John, and all that in Gettysburg, and what their dad did is the high-tension wire Well, he actually put in lights with my grandfather in Thule, Greenland for the Air Force, late 40s, and the bombers and B-52 and secret skunk works. And so I kind of weave a lot of, and then mothers and daughters and sisters and wives. I've had all those. So
all those and more.
Their conversations. I'm very observant of when a mother and daughter speak now. It's just kind of a little nit now where, that's their relationship when they're speaking to each other. So I've got a lot of letters and phone calls and missives and things found in chests. And, one of them travels across the country in a covered wagon from Iowa to Oregon. And the chair's there for that in a covered wagon.
Robert, we're almost out of time here. We just got a quick question. Did you plan this as 2 books, and might there be a third? What's going on with that?
Well, Volume 3, Untitled, is currently underway. I've got it outlined and probably down about 75, 100 pages. I've written like 20 of it in cursive and made some notes. On the iPhone, you can use the application Notes. And you can even voice in some thoughts and save them. So I've got a whole litany of everything from the start of this on Volume 1, Volume 2. But, yeah, I think the size of this, we decided it would be best to divide it into 2 books and then tell a story. Because it's almost like an intermission. I like these old movies with the intermissions like Lawrence of Arabia and all those kind of things, and you just don't see that anymore in the movies. Around the World in 80 Days, God, I think they had a 15-minute intermission. I never knew that until I saw it on TCM the other day. Tony Curtis, Natalie Wood, these were tremendous epic movies that were made, and the background of Gone with the Wind and who didn't get the part, and I have a lot in there in the movies, and I have Lana in the movies. I have Lurleen doing some things. So I'll leave that to the reader to check into it. It would be a thrill if people would buy this, and most of all, enjoy it. Enjoy the ride. It's going to take a while to read it, so it's not Go Dog Go, but it's the Iliad and the Odyssey. It's War and Peace. I guess it's my War and
Your
Peace.
grand opus. You're a magnum
grand
opus.
You're going Richard Dreyfuss on me there, so watch out. I like 6 Degrees of Separation in movies, too. You might see some of that.
Okay, we're getting down to about 90 seconds left, so we're going to need to wrap things up here.
Thanks, Robert.
I want to say thank you for being on the show with us.
Thank you both for having me on the show. This has been a thrill, and I'm very excited about the chair and all that you've done for me in publishing it. And let's see what happens, Volume 3. It will happen.
Okay, and people can catch this show again on YouTube or go to freshinkgroup.com to the podcast tab, where you can find our shows. You can also find the audio version of Robert being interviewed by ex-NFL player and Super Bowl winner Randy Cross. But go to the YouTube channel, Fresh Ink Group, subscribe, like.
And find us on Twitter at Voice of Indy and at Fresh Ink Group. And as Stephen just said, freshinkgroup.com. And with that, we will catch you all again next week, same time, Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and we've got a guest
Dr. Helen
next
Burrell.
week.
Dr. Helen Burrell, author of American Agony and the Hippocampus. Thanks, Robert.
Thanks so
Robert.
much. And I'm at Steelers 1288. Steelers 1288 at Steelers 1288.
Okay.
There you go.
You've been a part of Voice of Indy, a production of Fresh Ink Group. Spread the word, support our guests, then find us at freshinkgroup.com and be sure to hashtag Fresh Ink Group.